Welcome to the Run to Remember Challenge Coaches Box. I'm Amanda Reeves, Operations Manager here at Hands Across the Water, your host. And today I'm joined by Deb Sarah, a renowned breathwork facilitator and cold exposure specialist. Through her transformative ice bath and breathwork sessions, Deb helps people unlock their potential, find resilience, and connect with their inner strength. To all our listeners, remember that challenges, whether physical, mental, or emotional, are opportunities to grow. If you're ready to step into the ice or explore the power of your breath, check out Deb Sarah's incredible work and listen today as she teaches us to breathe deeply, stay resilient, and keep moving forward. Hey, Deb, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you, Amanda.
Me too. We've been speaking for so long now in the lead up to the whole Run to Remember, and it's been a real journey for the both of us, and I really enjoyed getting to know you. So really excited for our listeners to delve into more about who you are and why you do what you do. I think your journey is so incredible and you've overcome so many physical and mental hurdles. But if we can go back to the start, you've had a challenging childhood, physically, mentally, but specifically there was a big sort of fork in the road for you around when you suffered your accident. Are you comfortable in sharing a little bit about what that was, how it took place, and then we can sort of delve into the whole recovery piece, but more about what actually happened?
Yeah, of course. So I was on my way to work. It's actually a kind of funny story. So I was
Don't laugh,
currently
you cry. Is that the kind of
I'm terrible. I'm the worst at I have a real dark sense of humor. When you've been through a lot of kind of trauma and different things, my therapist always finds she loves our sessions because we laugh half the time because I'm always just making jokes. So I'm sure I'll make a couple of jokes here at my own expense, but I try to sit in the emotions rather than bringing all the humor. But anyway, so I was working at the public hospital at the time, down on the North Shore, and I was on my way to work. So I wasn't supposed to work that day. I was supposed to have a rest day, and I was having to start at 6:30 a.m. And I wasn't a morning person at the time. So I was walking to work, and it was the middle of winter. It was pitch black. I was crossing the road, and I was almost across to the other side, and the hairs on my skin just went on end, and stood up, and I looked to my right, and all of a sudden there was this car just flying towards me, and I went flying through the air, and it was a really interesting experience. I hope this isn't too graphic, but I went flying through the air, I landed on my back, and I just started screaming, and it's really interesting to look back because I went out of my body. I actually had this experience where I left my body and I could see myself lying on the ground.
I'm getting goosebumps. This is
Yeah, it was
real.
so weird. And so came back into my body, and it was a whole kerfuffle waiting so long for the ambulances to come straight into hospital. So I was working at the private hospital, and
Mm.
the funny story is that I ended up at the public hospital right next door. And so the private hospital's like, oh, this Deb, she didn't turn up to work, useless. And I'm off at the public hospital next door, and so straight in within 3 hours in surgery, because I'd had basically snapped my spine, and I had one of the most unstable fractures that you could possibly get. So hours later, wheeled out of surgery, and I love to say I was the bionic woman, because I had nuts and bolts placed all through my spine. And I just turned 21, so it was a week after my 21st birthday, and so it was quite a surreal experience to have at that age for someone who's very active,
Mm.
very independent. And it was quite incredible because I was placed in a bed next to someone who was quadriplegic. And so you can see how much, also being on
How
so much pain
confronting.
medication, how grateful I was to be able to have a body that functioned, because I didn't know at the time. I
I was going to
didn't
say, did
know.
you know at the time the severity of your injuries, whether you would walk again? Was that a question at this point?
So once they got into the surgeries and did all of that, they knew that by putting the metalware in, it stabilized the spine. So the next day they actually had me stand up, and
Wow.
I can't even explain. I went to get up and I screamed, and mum was standing in the door, and it's like that sound where she started crying, and then I passed out back on the bed. And I remember feeling guilty. I felt so horrible because I had legs that moved and the guy next to me didn't. And it was a very life-changing experience at 21 to have especially for someone who, I suffered from depression, but I'd never had anxiety until that point, really,
Mhm.
that I was aware of. So it was a very humbling and eye-opening experience to go through that at that age.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you screamed out, was that from pain or was
Oh
that
yeah, no,
just
it
shock
was
or was
no, no,
pain?
no. It was excruciating pain. Like I couldn't believe they wanted me to get up, and so I was almost kind of sitting up on the bed trying to get up, and the pain was so that I just passed out and
Wow.
was back in bed, and then they made me get up again. And so every day I had to get up and move and mobilize. And it's interesting because I told you before the call that it was about a week and a half ago. For the first time since the accident, I had an experience where I was just getting off the floor. And I had some of the most excruciating pain I've ever had in my life. And it took me back to that moment and just lying on the floor, sweating for an hour and a half, waiting for my dad to come help me get off the floor and put me on the couch. And it's moments like these when it's like I'm only 31 now,
Mm,
when you are this young that really put life in perspective and make you go, holy moly. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
You have these moments where your body just goes, stop. You need to take a second. This is it. And be in that moment. And I think when you are so young to go through something so physically traumatic. My husband had a motorbike accident a week before his 15th birthday and lost his leg. And my son and his friends at his daycare call him the robot guy or the robot man or transformer because he has this metal prosthetic leg. But he's very physical active and a personal trainer. And he said the same, he wouldn't have been in the field of work he is now if that accident took place. And he's actually very grateful for it. So to have these mental changes and pivots from something so traumatic can bring beautiful things. And we'll delve into a little bit about your work now and that whole transformation. But going back to the accident, that you remembered it and being out of body. My husband doesn't remember his at
Mhm.
all. Like that's really unique to be so present in the moment. Do you remember what happened to the driver? Was it just one of those things?
I remember the whole thing. So I can remember literally the whole thing. And it was really interesting because a girl from my school actually ended up being there and was one of the people that dragged me to the side of the road. That whole experience was a bit traumatic because
Gosh.
they dragged me to the side of the road, put me in recovery position, took me out. Like it is a miracle that I'm walking.
Yes.
I should be paralyzed. Like it's a miracle that I was lunging 100 kilos the other day. My PT pulled me back and said, we need to start rehabbing properly because I get way too excited and I'm like wanting to do more than my body can. So this has been a huge journey of learning how to pull back the ego and
Mm-hmm.
work with the body, which is a lot of the work that I do now. But going back to that, so yeah, what was your specific question? I got on a tangent. I love tangents of
I
like,
love it too. I'm like hanging on every word. I'm like,
I was like, let's pull it back and go back to the actual question you asked me.
just from being present, like I'm so floored that you were so present through the accident. And do you remember what happened to the driver's perspective? Like,
Yeah,
were
so
they a glimpse
I
of moment they just didn't see you, or?
I don't know. It's really hard to know what happened. I was on the opposite side of the road, and his story was the complete opposite to mine. So
Yeah,
I
wow.
remember the whole thing very specifically. I was crossing the road, I was going towards the station, going towards work, and
Yeah.
his story to the police was that I jumped in front of his car and was going the opposite way that I was actually going. So it was a pretty, yeah, not I don't understand. He clearly didn't see and made up a story. And
Mm,
because what happened, unfortunately, when I was dragged to the side of the road, I said to him, don't worry, it's not your fault. You didn't mean to, because I'm an extremely empathetic person. And so that's what the witnesses heard. No one saw the accident. And so it's very ridiculous. Someone who's just been hit by a car, spine's broken, dragged to the side of the
mm,
road. The police took that as the story, that I was at fault. That it was as if I had admitted fault. And so that was the
yeah.
story, that I had tried to jump in front of his car and I think basically try and kill myself, when actually I had just had empathy. And
Yeah.
it took me a long time to kind of get over that I was just imagining myself in his shoes. If I just hit someone, I would be feeling absolutely horrific, like, and I wouldn't be able to cope with the emotions. So me being the person who'd just been hit was trying to soothe the human health. And I have a pattern of that, unfortunately, is that when people hurt me, I try and make them feel better. It's not, yeah, it's not
Yeah.
best. I've broken it this year, I'm pretty sure, but like,
Look,
yeah.
it's not a great thing to happen in the moment for justice. But from knowing you and getting to know you, your kind heart speaks volumes. And I think that there should be more people like that in the world. And if we're more empathetic to everybody we don't mean to make mistakes. We don't mean to hurt people. And if you have that mindset of like, I get it, like it was one of those things, you didn't mean it, and have a bit of compassion for people, that just shows who you are and your kind heart, even at your worst moment of not knowing how severe this accident was, to have that ability to say, it's okay, don't feel bad. Like that should be something you're really proud of, not broken about. But going back to then taking you back into the hospital and you're in this excruciating pain, what were the steps into your physical recovery? How do you go from just, being dragged out of bed every day, screaming in pain, to getting to being where you are, so physically able now? What were the steps that you took physically?
Oh, a lot of rehab. So at first there wasn't a lot you could do. So I'd go to the physio and she'd kind of do things to the muscles of my back, just helping reduce inflammation and things like that. And then it was just basically starting from scratch and rebuilding my body. So learning to walk again, um, basically hobbling around the house. I couldn't do anything for myself. So there I am, 21, and this is just throwing me back to a week ago when the exact same thing happened,
Yeah.
which is really funny. Kind of funny, not so funny when you're 31 and independent, have been living alone for a while. But yeah, mum had to like basically shower me, like she had to take care of me. It was like I was a child again. And then I would go to rehab all the time, twice a week, and learning the basic movements. So going from someone who's extremely fit in the gym, doing all the things, competing in every sport, to lifting a leg was hard.
Yeah.
And this took years and years, and I'm still on a journey of rehab. I'm probably in the best space I've ever been in right now, but the issue with the back problem and something like this is that, for example, last week, I didn't injure myself, but the trauma, even 10 years later, spasmed my back to the point where I was in so much excruciating pain I couldn't move. So it's about relearning to be in a body that you don't really know anymore. And so it's the basic things of a lot of neural rewiring. That word did not come to me for a second there. And so literally trying to lift a leg and like my muscle and brain not quite comprehending what's going on. And then learning to kind of walk properly again. My hips would displace, so I'd be walking sideways. And I still sometimes have that. But again, I'm starting to properly rehab now for the first time ever.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's that journey of, the best way I can relate it, and I hate this analogy, but say if you're on a diet, right? And especially at Christmas time, and it's like going between that journey of like, I'm going to be really good and I'm never going to eat chocolate again. And then having the one chocolate and it's like, oh gosh, I've gone backwards. And then you don't eat chocolate for 5 days and then you eat 5 chocolates. And it's that constant journey of one step forward, 5 steps back. And that has been the most potent experience in teaching me to learn to listen to my body, because I can tell you for a long time, I would ignore it and I'd go into the gym and I'd overdo it. So I'd eat too many chocolates, let's just say that's the chocolate analogy. And then I'd have to be at home in pain, unable to move. And so
To feel like you'd done something, that you'd worked hard enough.
yeah, it's deconditioning all the ideologies, right, around if you're not sweating, you're not working, if you're not pushing, you're not good enough, and having to be in a body where you just can't. You can't do it. And so it's physical, but the hardest part is the mental game of it all, and uh, not allowing your ego to run your life.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking my language and you're talking chocolate. I literally have been pushing myself to participate in this Run to Remember challenge. And I'm not a runner. I have never run before, but I was like, right, I'm giving it a go. I'm going to do what I can do. It might not be the 1,400 kilometers that Pete's doing, but if I can do 1K, surely I can do one lap around the block. And I have a 4-year-old, and I said to him, I'm going to go for a run. He said, can I come? Like,
Oh.
sure. So I'm like, right, maybe this is our new journey. This is something we're going to do together. His passion and wanting to be involved is still there. However, yesterday's run came out and he's like, how about we just walk? And I was like, okay, let's just walk. And we did 3 kilometers rather than 1 kilometer because we walked, and we stopped and smelt every flower and looked at every bird and was in the moment. But I did. A couple of days earlier, I pushed myself. I'm like, I didn't run yesterday, have to run today. And I ran myself around the block and then ate a chocolate bar. Felt guilty about it. But it's such a to and fro from a mental perspective, trying to compact and validate the physical that you've done and then feel guilty for what you've eaten or where you're at emotionally or mentally. That journey for you would have been huge in a mental aspect, and there would have been moments, where you weren't coping well. What strategies have you sort of brought through that process? What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Share a bit about the mental journey.
I just want to say I love that your son said, let's walk, because I also think like we don't always need to push ourselves to extremes, and to actually be honoring our body that today I want to walk and rest a bit is really beautiful. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
actually I got motivated by Jenna Louise, one of our other coaches, who does these incredible ultra marathons and phenomenal feat. She's a powerhouse. And she was saying that she was on this trek and it was the middle of the night and she had the headlamp and it was really rocky terrain. And I was powering through looking at my feet. And this person came up behind her and said, just stop and look up. And she said it was the clearest night and I could see everything, and talks about not being just the destination, not just getting those Ks or the finish line or that target, but being so present and taking that into account. You're saying, going, yep, let's do that. And I stopped and looked at, I said, look, there's a cockatoo on that wire. And we stopped and talked to the cockatoo. And that has been a real journey mentally, going, just be present.
Mm.
It's really unique, and it's been a real great connection for the two of us as well. But yeah, going back to your mental journey and what's worked, what hasn't worked, what have you tried, and what's a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so I'll take you back to the time when I lived in Japan.
Oh yeah.
And so it's not just been this thing of I broke my back and yes, I'm resilient and I'm going to push forward and like go, go, go. Definitely not. There was a time where, my back was so painful and I swore off exercise for 2 years and I gained a lot of weight very quickly. And it was not easy. So I was living in Japan and I was living in the smallest village and I had nothing to do and I was just kind of by myself each day, and I just got a bit over it. I got to a point where for 2 years I'd been so afraid of the pain of my body and so afraid of exercise, and I was so angry. I think it's so important that we do honor that sometimes we're going to go through periods in our lives where we can't be these warriors and these people who are just like, go get it. And like, that's a lot of the rhetoric we get, that if you're not doing well and you're not lifting all the weights, then you're not good enough. But it's just not true. And sometimes we need to have those periods in time where we fall apart. And I did. I was eating fried chicken from the service station. Oh my God, in Japan, they have the best like service station, like snacks and things. But I spent 2 years and my body was just aching. You know, I'd gotten to a point where I was extremely unfit because I was so angry at my body. I hated my body. I felt that my body hated me and it just wasn't working. And I just got to a point where I couldn't do it anymore. I'd had enough and it was time to make a change. And instead of doing extremes like the diet industry, the wellness industry, and our culture likes to quite often tell us to do, which I've done many times, uh, I went, no, I'm just going to start with one goal. And I was living in the most beautiful place with the most beautiful surroundings, and they actually have seasons over there. So I decided 10,000 steps a day. The arbitrary number that we've chosen is 10,000 steps a day. That's all I'm going to commit to. I'm not going to change my food. I'm not going to change anything else. And so every single day I got out, I put my little podcast in. There was like a cow farm nearby. And so I'd walk through these rice paddies past the cow farm and I'd just do my 10,000 steps each day. And when I'd done that for long enough, I went, okay, I'm going to do a little workout. It wasn't weights. It was just some body weight stuff in the tiny little front yard that I had following this little app. And I did that. And once I'd built that up enough, I went, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. And so once a week, they had a gym with rusty equipment. It was this like rusty room. And like it was not a gym. And I was like, what is this stuff? And so I'd go in there once a week and I'd lift a little barbell and do a little squat. And it was a slow, progressive build because what that did is it gave me the ability to build belief at the same time and integrity. A lot of the time, what we're doing is going to these extremes and we don't believe we're capable of them, so they're short-lived. It's out of fear quite often as well. So maybe we're going on that diet or doing that extreme workout because we hate ourselves and it's coming from fear. But for the first time in my life, I was coming from a place of I love myself. I don't want to feel this way anymore. So I'm going to take small steps. And so every day as I took the small step, I built the belief, I built the self-love, and I was able to progress that in a way that it was sustainable.
Yeah.
And the mind and the body worked together. And this is really important instead of the mind and the ego being like, body, I want you to be here, even though you're not literally physically capable of it, which is why
Yeah.
I kept injuring myself and got to that place of, I just can't do this anymore, which led me to swear off exercise and just hate life.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And I think that's been the learning through a lot of the conversations we've been having is that holistic look to fitness. And, how nutrition plays a part, how hydration plays a part, how the physical and strength training plays a part in Pete's run. And, but the biggest impact is your inner voice and how you're talking to yourself, and how you are showing yourself that grace and love. And you can't expect to be thriving in life if you're not looking after yourself in that holistic aspect. And I think that's remarkable in your journey, and it's acknowledging those stumbles along the way, is that you're not always going to be perfect and you are going to lose it, and go, okay, that's okay, today's another day, start again. And you talked about, like, a lot of those mental hurdles that you've had to overcome, and change that inner voice of going, yep, my body's not agreeing with me right now, but what can I do? And changing that message, which I really love. And talking, and we'll delve into it a little bit now. I think part of that process for you, and what resonated with me in your journey, is now that you offer these cold exposure moments, I guess we're calling them. What's the official term for ice bath and breath work experiences?
I mean, is there an official one? Breathwork and ice bath. I like to use the term cold exposure. Along the journey, I've really changed in my perspective and the way that I run things, especially the difference as well between, say, men and women and how our bodies operate. So I like to talk about cold exposure more so than ice baths, because I do think we can get very obsessed with the extremes of the ice bath, but actually cold exposure itself doesn't have to be as an extreme and is more accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I'm always cold. My house, I've always got a jumper or a blanket on, and the boys in my house are always hot. So there's definitely a difference in cold exposure, men and women in our house anyway. But when was the first time you experienced personally this ice bath experience? How did it get into your world?
It's interesting. So as I've been saying, like, I'm always someone who's wanted to challenge myself, run towards fear instead of away from it. And COVID, the blessing in disguise. But I had left a relationship. And so just before COVID, I ended up having to live with him for 10 months. And then I couldn't leave because I'd quit my job, had no money. It was great. And then I eventually was able to find a place for myself. And I lived alone for a long time. And I was someone who was very social prior to this. Coming out of that experience, I had very bad social anxiety. It's like I didn't know how to talk to people anymore. I didn't know how to leave the house. It was bizarre. And so one of the things that had kept me going and like really excited, I accidentally found cold exposure, was during COVID. I would go to, when we were allowed, I would go to the beach and do a coastal walk in the morning, and it was freezing cold. And I would go in the water and I'd be shaking and I'd come out with blue lips, and I didn't know anything about it at that time, what I was quite doing, but all I knew that was the deep depression that I was feeling when I got out for those couple of minutes. I felt like I could face the world, and I felt amazing, and I just felt strong. I felt like a strong human being who'd achieved something for the day.
Mm,
And so I started looking into ice baths because I was like, okay, I'm terrified, but let's do this. And so I eventually found a place to do it, and I went to the ice baths and we did breath work, and I got into the ice bath, and it was, I can't explain the experience. I stepped into the ice bath and I almost started crying. And this is something I see a lot with people who come along, and something I've now experienced a lot as well. I can get into the ice bath and cry because we get so stuck in our heads in society. We get so stuck in the thinking and the pushing and the forcing and the doing that
mm,
we, as you're saying, smelling all the flowers, looking at things, we don't do that very much because we are so fast paced. That what I love about the ice bath is when I got in it, you don't have a choice to
mm.
do and be fast paced. It's just you and the ice bath. It's just you and your breath, and you're forced to sit in the discomfort, and you're also forced to get back into your body. We're living very much cut off from the head and the body, whereas it helps you to reconnect into the body. And so getting out, I felt, if I thought the getting in the ocean was a lot, getting out, I was elated. It was like I'd had 20 coffees. I ran into the water and I was like, oh my God, I feel phenomenal. And for someone who had been experiencing depression for a very long time and PTSD, living alone during COVID, it was such an empowering experience to see how I could shift my state, how I didn't have to rely on the external per se, and there were things that I could do, such as the breath work, or just getting in a cold shower,
Mm.
to change my state. And it takes you from that, I think, state of feeling like a victim to life to having more of a sense of empowerment and sovereignty within your own life.
Yeah, amazing. And all of that sounds so like enticing. Like I want to experience that, no coffee feeling, but the elation of it. But the idea of stepping into that ice bath is a little intimidating. Like what do you say to people going, I can't do it, that terrifies me? How do you convince people to take that first step? What is the encouraging moment?
There's a couple of things I suggest. I think it's about being kind to yourself. Like, I was really scared as well. And it's also like, start small. I think breath work is a key component.
Mm,
It's taking your nervous system. So when you are stressed, and this is what I hear feedback from the people who in the community and who have taken through ice baths, is the breath work has made the biggest difference, because, and as well as community. So I guess those are kind of the two main things that I recommend: is safe environment, which is key. Ice baths are a place where you can have health complications. It's not likely. I've never had that. I've helped over 2,000 people. So it's not that they're dangerous in that way, but there are things that can happen. And I think it is important and negligent not to say that when we talk
yeah.
about this topic, because for me, safety is extremely important. And so it's about finding a place where you feel safe and held if you are nervous. So, the community that I've created, what I love about it is everyone is so supported and loving that everyone feels held. We do our breath work. And so it helps you to kind of switch the mind off, move from a state of panic and into a state of calm, and reconnect you with the body. This prepares your body in a way that when you step into the ice bath, it actually feels less difficult. I've had people who've come late, they've missed the breath work and they've got into the ice bath, but then they've done it a second time, and they tell me how different that experience is.
Yeah, right. So the breath work happens prior to the ice bath.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think as well, setting. I know there's a lot of clubs that have popped up, and recovery places and all of that, that do ice baths. And I think if you're a first timer, look at the setting and look at who you're with.
Mm,
And because I do think that's important, but that also comes back to the why. I think your why are you doing it, is also really important, because if it's just, oh, I don't really care about the breath work, I don't really care about the community, I'm just someone who
Everyone's
wants
doing
to
it. I want to give it a go and get my Instagram
go
shot.
for it, go wherever you want. But I think why I started all of this really was about more of the connection to self and spiritual element, less about the it's a fad element. It
Mm,
was truly about, I had social anxiety, I was alone. It was an accident that this community was created, and um, it was a place where I could challenge myself and challenge my fears and the identities that I'd created about myself, because so often we live through our lives without questioning the beliefs that we have or the limits that we place on ourselves. And so what's so beautiful about the ice bath is it's an experience where you can push through that ceiling and break through the limits of who you believe you are, because who we believe we are is not always who we actually are. And I think that's really beautiful to do that while connecting with people in a way that's not over alcohol necessarily. It's in a way that's in a space that's safe and that's helping you to be truly you without extra substances and things like that.
yeah, for sure. And I think that I love how you said it was an accident. It was a beautiful accident that you discovered it. And, I think that aligns with a lot similarly to Hands Across the Water and why Peter Bain started the charity. It was post tsunami that affected Thailand. It was 20 years ago this Boxing Day. And he was taken there to lead the body identification process after what was a horrific accident, a natural disaster. But something really beautiful has grown from it through this organization, and giving the children of Thailand hope and brighter futures and things that we can do to support a life of choice for them. We're so blessed in Australia. And if we can have any impacts into creating some options and choices for them for their life, it's really beautiful. It's something I'm really proud to be a part of. And, Pete's doing this 1,400-kilometer run through Thailand in 26 days in the heat and humidity of Thailand to honor this milestone, and to raise much needed funds for those children and those futures. And we have a great community in Hands that support us and have been with us for such a long time. And I think there's a lot of alignment about community and experiences. But watching Pete's journey, he's currently, I think, 10 or 11 days in. He is doing ice baths through this run. I mean, obviously it helps with the heat, but you talk about the mental aspect and the mental recovery, but there would be some physical impacts in regards to people who are doing these endurance athletic adventures. What are the physical benefits of ice bath and breath work, and what tips would you give Pete in regards to preparing, not just dunking himself to cool down?
100% recommend breath work beforehand, especially when you're doing such hectic physical activity, because you're going to be in a state of stress. Your body is going to be in your sympathetic nervous system. It's going to be overwhelmed. It's going to be tired. It's going to be in a place of fatigue. And so to get straight into an ice bath from a run is going to be extremely shocking for the system. An ice bath is a shock to the system. It takes time to recover from as well. So to do the breath work beforehand is a really nice kind of bridge
Yeah.
to allow the system to step down, step into a place of calm and rest, and prepare yourself to then move into the cold, which will then help to reduce inflammation and recover better. I'm not fully across the science of when it comes to recovering for exercise. It's a bit up in the air. There needs to be more research in that area, but it does show to help to reduce inflammation, and that will help with the muscle recovery, as well as, helping you to reconnect to the body. So there definitely are benefits in that way. And when it comes to the breath work, it's a really key component, staying within that nasal breathing to help oxygenate the body, create the nourishment throughout the body. So together, they're a really great way to recover.
Yeah, I was talking to a sports podiatrist, and he was talking a lot about inflammation and feet, particularly, he's on his feet for approximately 60 Ks a day, and having to prep with shoes for the trip because his feet will swell and they will be really inflamed, and the blisters and all the horrible things that goes through that. But yeah, I think, the inflammation piece and the physical recovery of just bringing it at the end of that day and slowing down and building that, that mental resilience whilst treating the physical body at the same time. It's clearly making a difference, is jumping in there every day. But yeah, it's a real, looking at Pete's journey, it's that holistic aspect to it. You were featured in ABC News in regards to your ice bath and breathworks business, and talked a lot about the building, how to manage stress, and how to build that resilience. And I know you've focused very much on corporate experiences and bringing groups and team building through that. Can you share a little bit about, from a corporate perspective, how do you build a program that brings that team together and has that physical experience, but a real bonding mentally and emotionally?
Yeah, I love this so much. So I've been working with the company for a while now. And when I first started with them, we would do breath work. So they were a team that weren't working very cohesively together. There was a lot of fights. They were extremely stressed, extremely high performance. And so I came in and I would help them learn how to breathe in a way that helps them to calm the nervous system and teach them how to communicate and interact from a place of, I think we can get quite, when you're in a stress state, it's very hard to communicate because your thinking brain's switched off and you're coming from emotions. And so the beautiful part of what I like to do is take you through breath work first and then go through mindset, communication skills, and connection skills to build that cohesive team. And so we started to do that, and it was really quite incredible watching the team go from when I'd come into the room, extremely heightened, extremely like talking so loud, to me coming in and them automatically just being like, oh. And so they knew that an ice bath experience was coming up, and everyone was terrified. No one wanted to do it. And so it was really interesting to watch them from the first session to then going into the ice bath experience. In the first session, they weren't really supporting each other in that way. There was a lot of kind of, the word's not coming to me. It's not bickering that I'm looking for, but kind of underhand comments and things like that. By the time we got to the ice baths, it was so beautiful to watch that people were scared, but everyone, like I love it when I can take a step back and just like I'm facilitating, but it's actually, you watch the team transform and start to help each other because it's a difficult experience. It
Yeah.
is not easy to get into an ice bath, especially in a corporate setting, and to watch them come together in a way that they're actually supporting each other and encouraging each other. And then everyone wants to get in a second time, and watching them go from a place of fear, I don't want to do it, resistance, to, I love this, when can we do it again? Is quite phenomenal. And I think it's also really beautiful because a lot of the time, a lot of the team building stuff when we do at work is not really it's not the best. It's not really what we want to do. And it might seem quite scary to do something like this, but what's beautiful about it is it's incredible for health, but it's also teaching teams to work in a coherent way. I've never seen a team not come together in a beautiful way, even teams that are resistant to working nicely together, because it is an experience. It's not just like a high ropes, which high ropes is great, but it's an interactive experience where people are really afraid. And when you're put in these experiences where there's really heightened emotions, but you're in a safe space, that's really important. It changes dynamics, and it changes them in a way that they're not just changed for that 1 hour. It bonds people together in a way that, like, they used to always in the office joke about like mouth taping, because I'd tell you to mouth tape, and they'd be going around like, are you mouth taping? And creating those in jokes in a way that I'm the weird breathing lady that's coming along with my little sound bowls and making them do weird things. But it's a really beautiful thing to see, because you're working on both, say, your health, but pushing through those limitations that we were talking about before, which is also helping people to perform in a way that, exceeds what they think they can. And that then presents within the environment, where I've had teams who weren't meeting targets now exceeding financial targets. So
Yeah,
it's
wow.
a really beautiful, holistic program that you can do that helps people in every facet of their life at home. And I know this sounds like a lot, but these kind of experiences really help to transform people. And that's why I'm so passionate about them.
Absolutely. And I think that's, you can't be your best self unless you're taking care of all those aspects. And, you talked about, the ribbing each other and coming from your own fears, right? Of going, well, if I'm giving you a hard time, a whole like joking aspect of going, well, then it's deflected from my fear and the fact that I don't want to get in. And I've done, as you said, all these experiences are great for team building, but I remember one that I did in when I was in corporate was bush regeneration. And yeah, great aspect, needs to be done. Cannot think that I connected with anybody while I was picking up trash from the bush or planting plants. Had to be done. Loved the experience. We were outdoors. It was wonderful. But from a team building perspective, I don't think I probably connected with anybody on a deeper level or made any impact in changing my ways of working or my relationships with people that I work with as well. So I think when we look at that well-being and that team building experience, it's not just tick box. It's not just, okay, we'll go and build a bike or go and plant some plants or pick up rubbish or tick the box and have your volunteer day off. It's having these experiences where you are stepping out of your comfort zone. You are learning something about yourself. And learning those tools, I think, to changing and being better and being more resilient and connecting with people. And that speaks volumes. And that I really love that story. Now, we're getting to the end of it where everybody's participating in the Run to Remember challenge. They're pushing themselves physically. Hopefully, we're talking to them about the holistic aspect. We've talked about nutrition and hydration. We've spoken to Heaps Normal about, looking at our Australian culture of how we drink and how we connect with people and have those engagement opportunities and bringing our communities together. And it's something that Hands is really focused on is these shared experiences. We offer our bike rides in Thailand. We have International Women's Day coming up again next year. We have so many ways of bringing our community together. But Deb, from your perspective and your involvement in working with Hands and sharing and donating your time, how is this mission aligned to you from a personal perspective?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I think that really resonate with me. I love community, obviously. And so I think the way that you're creating a run to bring communities together in a way, as you've just said, like not with alcohol, it's not with the way that maybe within our Australian culture, we do bring people together in a way that's not so healthy. This is a really beautiful way to help people come together with something that's going to help them grow. Yeah. And so for me personally, I was looking at some of your values as well throughout this process. And when I first spoke to you, I love, the concepts of resilience and hope and future choice. And it's something that's really become really important to me, especially over this year, is the empowerment of choice and education. Because we can get and me personally, I'll speak from me, like through my life, I've been conditioned to behave in a certain way, to think in a certain way, and to be a certain way. And so the idea of empowering people through education and then that gives them choice, and these children overseas, like it's incredible, because we can get so caught up in our ways, right? And so stuck. And so to have the privilege of working with a company, a charity that is providing empowering choice to children, really aligns with where I'm at in wanting to help individuals realign with themselves, realign with who they are, remove the conditioning, and be able to act from a place of integrity and live the life that they want. And so in doing that, it creates resilient people who create a safer and more beautiful society.
Yeah, totally. And, education is so important. We've put 40 of our children through university, but not everyone wants to go to uni. I didn't. It's not everybody's path. And I think this is something that, a huge fundraising goal of $1 million through this run is to create some alternate career choices so that the kids do have a choice. It's not just uni, that's absolutely something accessible to you, but we want to build a hospitality training school, a digital learning center, and an agricultural school, which keeps kids in their community. It gives the community options for business and training and jobs at the end of it as well. So we've got a big target, but big dreams and big hopes to achieve. And you can get involved still. There's kilometers, Pete's Kilometers you can sponsor for $50, and you go into the draw to win one of two $5,000 cash prizes, which is going to come in very handy. Or you can make a donation to the run itself and help us to try and achieve some of these dreams. But Deb, from your perspective, if people listen to this want to get involved in an experience of an ice bath and breath work, if they want to take their corporate teams on one of these experiences, how do they reach you? How do they find you?
Yep, so you can email me at deb@debsarah.com. I am updating my website and changing things at the moment, but there's still the tab there where you can have a look at the corporate experience if you'd like to, previous people I've worked with, what's available there. But a lot of the stuff that I do is very individualized. So I don't really do repeat things. I love to understand the culture, the values, and what the specific corporate or team needs, and then I'll develop a plan from there. So you can check out that tab on the website or reach out to me for a chat, because I'd love to hear more from you and your team and what they need so that I can create something that's actually impactful for what you need.
Yeah, amazing. Love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today, your insights and experience, and thanks for taking this journey with me. I really enjoyed connecting with you through this process.
Thanks for having me, Amanda. I have absolutely loved getting to know you and learning more about Run to Remember. I'm really honoured and excited to be involved.
Thanks so much. Bye.